Hey everyone, it's Tobes, and welcome to your second monitor. Today is the next video in my series of March of the Machine Commander deck techs. I'm covering every legendary creature from the March of the Machine main set, in no particular order, plus the extra legends from Mom Jumpstart, like today's, the special pre-release promos, and if there's interest, maybe I'll do the non-face legends from the Mom Commander products. So if you have a request for a March of the Machine Commander you'd like to see me build, or a way you want to see me build them, let me know in the comments below. As you see, today our commander is Surrak and Goreclaw, the once Khan of the Temur Frontier and the terror of Kalsisma herself, both from the plane of Tarkir. Since this is another legend that was only printed in the March of the Machine Jumpstart product, we don't actually have lore for this team-up. All we can say is that Surrak, famously known for his bear punching, fought alongside Goreclaw during the Phyrexian invasion. This seems strange until we remember that the original Khans of Tarkir story involved Surrak and his fellow Temur joining forces with the very bear he punched to repel the Sultai, after which Surrak gave that bear a merciful death rather than let it die from a poisoned arrow. He later donned its skin as a gesture of respect and honor, so memes aside, his alliance with Goreclaw makes a kind of sense. I'm excited to show you what I put together for Surrak and Goreclaw, but before we get started, let's go over my deck building template. I want to build my decks, when I build them, around my commander. I want to show off why that card is so cool and why I put it in charge of my deck, so whatever it asks of me, I put about 30 cards toward doing. That's our game plan. It's what we do at the table and how we try to win. 30 more cards go toward supporting that game plan in the form of card advantage, acceleration, and interaction pieces. I will usually run 1 or 2 Wraths, sometimes more if it would play into the deck's game plan. Sometimes, like today, none at all, because it's a creature-heavy deck, and I want to keep my creatures on board. But I almost always keep to my floor of 38 lands, so I can make sure I always hit my land drops, and I can cast my spells, and I can play the game. So let's talk about our team-up commander. Surrak and Goreclaw is a 6/5 legendary human bear, a human and a bear, for 4 and double green. It has trample, it gives all of our other creatures trample, and whenever another non-token creature we control enters, we put a 1/1 counter on it, and it gains haste until end of turn. This commander is one of the greenest cards that ever greened. Everything has trample. Everything is bigger than it's printed to be. Everything can attack right now. Surrak and Goreclaw even has the same casting cost as Colossal Dreadmaw. Come on. So we're not rocking the boat. This deck is about doing green things. We have a lot of ramp to get our commander out as soon as possible, and then an army of brutes to send at our opponents. We aren't interested in getting tricky with the stack or combining continuous effects in interesting ways. We are here to smash and smash and smash some more. And as someone who enjoys the complexity of Magic and the subtle social side of Commander, playing a deck that's all about turning idiots sideways is so much fun. Our game plan, like I said, is to ramp out our commander as soon as possible. We have discounts for our spells, as well as more traditional ramp effects, like Mana Dorks and Rampant Growths. We're also a little heavy on our card advantage engines, between drawing cards when we attack and when our big creatures come into play. We have a bit of a ferocious theme, caring about our creatures with power 4 or more, but even greater than that is our emphasis on above-rate creatures. A 6/6 for 4 mana, which of course our commander makes into a 7/7 with haste and trample, don't mind if I do. Between overrun effects and redundant sources of trample, our methods for blowing our opponents out are some of the most classic. Because we have triggers when our monsters come into play, we have some cute ways of cheating them in early and recasting them later to double dip on those payoffs, plus sneak in some good damage. And because Surrak and Goreclaw ensures that all of our creatures can attack right away, we have additional payoffs for those attacks, like drawing cards, making tokens, protecting our squad, making them even bigger, or just more and more ramp so we can do it all again the next round. Red players, ask yourselves, what if your ball lightning stuck around? I like decks in which the threats are crummy, because it means opponents feel like they're wasting their removal every time they take our pieces off the board. This deck works in the opposite way. After the first few turns, every creature is a threat, and even sending Surrak and Goreclaw back to the command zone doesn't stop our deluge of value. More than a third of our deck has to be answered, and while our opponents dig for those answers, we're fielding more threats, keeping our lands tapped, and amassing creatures until the gap between their combined power and any particular player's life total just vanishes. This is clean, honest, fair Magic. We tap lands for creatures, and tap creatures for damage, and one after another, our opponents die. We can spread out the damage if we like, but it's just as easy and a lot more satisfying to declare one opponent our rival or our honorable prey and cut them down first. If another opponent sneaks in and bloodies us while we're in the process of taking out our chosen foe, we can easily change our focus and show them what bloodletting really looks like. After a couple of games, it'll become clear. Whoever we chose is going down. Not solely, just first. Can our opponents beat us before we sink our claws into them too? Maybe, but one thing's certain. They aren't going to bother us until they have to. They'll know better than to poke the bear. You'll enjoy this deck if you want to indulge your inner Timmy or Tammy, immersing yourself in what Mono Green has offered since the game was first printed. Or if you like the thought that when your friends think about beatdown decks, yours is the first that will come to mind. So as usual, this Moxfield list is linked in the video's description. At the bottom of it, you will see a considering section below the deck list. It's full of cards that I considered putting in the deck and ultimately decided not to. But if you have a different focus you want for building this deck, if you want to go more for a huge creatures rather than sort of a gentle curve toward huge creatures, if you have a bigger budget or even a smaller one, that considering section is a good place for you to start when you build your own Surrak and Goreclaw deck. So we're going to start with, well, we're starting with our brutes. These are all creatures that are either big or are in the deck to go to combat. Some of these creatures do both, and so it depends on if we want to swing in with them when they first come in or if we want to hold them back and just continue to get value from them. But many of these we just want to swing with because they're going to be a little bit bigger and a little bit tramplier, and of course have haste thanks to Surrak and Goreclaw. So lots of different good options with this. But for the most part, this is just a section full of creatures that are mostly above rate that we want to attack with. We are not on the back foot with this deck. We are swinging in. We are the beatdown, even if we don't feel like it. So we should act like it. So we're going to start off with a card from Throne of Eldraine, my favorite set. It's Lovestruck Beast. This is an adventure card. So what it normally is 2 and a green for a 5/5 Beast Noble that can't attack unless we control a 1/1 creature. But it also has an adventure, a sorcery, for a single green called Heart's Desire that says, create a 1/1 white human creature token. If you've never seen adventures before, the way this works is when this is in your hand, you can either cast the Beast, in which case it's just a 5/5 with this ability for 3, or you can cast the sorcery, making a 1/1 token, and then when it resolves, the whole card goes to exile, and you can cast the Lovestruck Beast from exile. You have permission to do so. You cannot cast the sorcery once the beast is already in play, so it's either cast the beast or cast the sorcery and then the beast. But you can do this on a separate turn. So what's nice about it is, if you spend 3 mana, you get a 5/5 that can't attack unless you control a 1/1. It still can block though. But if you're willing to spend 2 in double green in the form of casting Heart's Desire first and then the beast, well, you'll get your 1/1 and the beast can attack. What's nice about this is Surrak and Goreclaw puts 1/1 counters on non-token creatures. So when we cast Heart's Desire, we're going to get our 1/1 token, and it's not going to become a 2/2, which means the beast is still going to be able to attack. And the beast will come in as a 6/6 trampler with haste for just 3 mana. Pretty sweet. Next up is Outcaster Trailblazer. I played the heck out of this card in Standard. This is great. I guess it's still in Standard. For 2 and a green, we have a 4/2 Human Druid that when it enters, we add 1 mana of any color to our pool. Of course, we will add green in this deck. And whenever another creature we control with power 4 or greater enters, we draw a card. So this is just one of the 2 card draw effects from Garruk's Uprising. That's pretty good. This is a nice card advantage engine for us in this deck. However, the Trailblazer can also be plotted for 2 and a green, which means if we pay 2 and a green at sorcery speed, on a later turn, at sorcery speed, we can cast the Trailblazer without paying its mana cost. So since it's the same cost as its mana cost, the plot cost is, it's sort of like we're prepaying for this, but we would want to do that because on a later turn, we can cast the Trailblazer for free, it enters, we make a mana, so it ramps us a tiny little bit, and then we can use that mana to cast a creature, power 4 or greater, and draw a card when it comes in. So yeah, Trailblazer also will become a 5/3 hasty trampling creature when if we play it once Surrak and Goreclaw is already in play. But if we get this in before our commander, well then our commander is going to come in and we're going to draw a card off the Trailblazer from it. We might even be able to use this to power our commander out a turn earlier if we plot this first and then play it for free, a subsequent turn, and get that mana from it. So yeah, love the Trailblazer. Next is Ronus the Indomitable. This is another 5/5 for 2 and a green. It's a legendary god. It has Death Touch and Indestructible, because it's Ronus. We love Ronus. However, Ronus can't attack or block unless we control another creature with power 4 or greater. We have so many of those, just so many. So Ronus is going to be able to help us out, almost certainly, right when he comes in. And is indestructible and has Death Touch, so very strong blocker, very strong attacker and blocker. But also, we can empower Ronus on its own if we only have a creature with, 2 or 3 power, because we can pay 2 and a green to give another creature +2/+0 and trample until end of turn. If that pumps them up to power 4 or greater, then Ronus can attack and block. That means we could pay a total of 6 if we don't have a big enough creature, but we do have another creature with at least power 2, and Ronus can come in and can attack and block right away. Or, if Ronus is in play, and we have, let's say, a 2/2 and nothing else, our opponent might attack us with their big creature, thinking there's no way we're going to block and Ronus can't block. We just, on their turn, pump up our other creature so that it has a power of 4 or greater, and Ronus can block now, and we block with our 5/5 Death Touch Indestructible God. So yeah, love this big snake friend. Next up, from Dominaria 2018, Steel Leaf Champion is here. This is triple green for a 5/4 Elf Knight that can't be blocked by creatures power 2 or less. A little bit of evasion, but for the most part, this is just a 5/4 for 3. That's pretty good. With Surrak and Goreclaw already in play, this is a hasty trampling 6/5 for 3. Pretty sweet. Topiary Stomper is next. I love this card from Streets of New Capenna. Big Stomps is 2 and double green for a 4/4 plant dinosaur with Vigilance. Vigilance is really nice in this deck. And when it enters, we get to Rampant Growth. We search our library for a basic, put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. We've got a lot of basic forests in this deck, so Topiary Stomper really makes sense with this. However, it can't attack or block until we control 7 or more lands. So it's got a built-in temporary pacifism on it, but that's okay. For 3 mana, we get Rampant Growth, which is only 1 more mana, 1 more green than Rampant Growth's cost, that eventually, and it doesn't take long for it to happen, becomes a 4/4 Vigilant Dinosaur. And even when it comes in, even if it can't attack or block, it will still trigger things like Outcast or Trailblazer, so we'll be able to draw a card off of it in the process. Pretty good. Kind of similarly is Wayward Swordtooth. For 2 and a green, we get a 5/5 dinosaur that lets us play an additional land on each of our turns, so that's actual ramp. But it can't attack or block unless we have the City's Blessing. The City's Blessing is something that you have whenever you have a spell with Ascend, Resolve, or, if it's a permanent, come into play, once you have 10 or more permanents. So it's kind of a weird mechanic. It's just sort of, Wayward Swordtooth, I think, is the only card in the deck that has Ascend, so while this is in play, the very moment we have it in play and 9 other permanents, at least, we gain the City's Blessing, and we'll just have it for the rest of the game, even if we go down below 10 permanents for any reason later. That does count lands, too. So it only takes a little while for us to get up to, Ascend mode, and once we have, we've got a 5/5 dinosaur that can attack and block. However, even when it can't, we can still play an extra land on each of our turns, and it will still trigger things like Outcast or Trailblazer, because it's not like it's not a creature. It still is one. So yeah. Next up is Bristlebud Farmer from the Big Score. 2 and double green for a 5/5 trampling plant druid. It's nice that it just has trample even before we get Surrak and Goreclaw out. When it enters, we make 2 foods, so we just get a couple of food tokens. If we want to eat them for life, we can, but they're really here for us to use with the farmer, because whenever the farmer attacks, we can sacrifice a food, and if we do, we mill 3, and we can put a permanent from among those milled cards into our hand. We are running 6 sorceries and 2 instants. Yeah, so every other card in our deck is a permanent. So in all likelihood, we're going to be able to choose between 3 cards whenever we attack with this to put in our hand. The others will just go to the graveyard, and that's totally fine. This essentially draws us a card twice since we've got these food tokens. Pretty good. Next up is Colossal Rattleworm. I know you're thinking, why in the world is this in this deck? Go with me for a second. So this is a 6/5 worm for 2 and double green, so that's a pretty good rate on its own, and it has flash as long as we control a desert. A desert is a type of land. We'll get to it, trust me. It also has trample, so a trampling 6/5 for 4 is already pretty good. And if we pay 1 and a green and exile it from our graveyard, so it's got to be in the graveyard for us to do this, we can search our library for a desert, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. So a little bit of desert synergy for it here, which is why we're running 3 deserts in the deck, just so we can use the Rattleworm with it. Now I know you're thinking, how much of a payoff is the Rattleworm if we're putting deserts in the deck just for it? Well, it's not that huge of a payoff, but with our commander, it's a 4-mana 7/6 trample with haste. Even without our commander, it's a 4-mana 6/5 trample. That's very strong. In fact, it's one of the best rates for a 4-drop in green that's out there. And the fact that it only gets better if we have deserts in our deck is great. We can ramp into a desert once it's dead. We can maybe flash it out if we happen to get a desert out early on, and we have a pretty good chance of finding that desert in the first 10 or 11 turns of the game. So, we'll say, by turn 4, which is when we'd be able to cast it, it's pretty likely we're going to draw a desert, or it's more likely than you'd think. It's like a 30% chance. So yeah, Rattleworm, not bad. Next up is Original Goreclaw, originally from M19, I believe. 3 and a green for a 4/3 bear. It's Goreclaw, Terror of Kalsisma. Gives all of our creatures with power 4 or greater a discount of 2 generic mana. That's huge. That lets us get our commander out 2 turns earlier if we want to, assuming we can get Goreclaw out 1 turn earlier. So yeah, this is a big discount, and it applies to an awful lot of cards in our deck. I try to follow the guideline that you don't put cards that discount other cards, that discount other spells in your deck, unless you have about 40 hits for those things. It's not actually ramp. It's just, it would even be better to just include Rampant Growth or like a diamond mana rock in your deck rather than that discount. Goreclaw, I don't think hits 40 cards that it can discount in our deck, but what it does hit are, I think, 25 or 30 other cards that can discount it, and since it's a discount of 2, and that discount works on our commander, I think she's worth putting in here. In addition, even without that, when Goreclaw attacks, each creature we control with power 4 or greater gets +1/+1 and trample until end of turn. More redundant trample, and a pump spell, or a pump effect, that affects all of our creatures power 4 or greater, which is to say, probably all of our creatures that are attacking. So being able to power things out and get a 2 mana or even 4 or 6 mana discount on the spells we're casting in a single turn, that's very powerful, especially since it works on our commander. Next up, we have Hulking Raptor. This is 2 and double green for a 5/3 dinosaur. It has Ward 2, so it's got Crawlworm stats if we get it with our commander. And at the beginning of our first main phase, we just add double green. So we get a free bonus mana that we only get during our first main phase, but we get it every first main phase. And that can really power out our big creatures faster. So yeah, Hulking Raptor, a nice one that we might not even want to attack with if we're not willing to risk it, because just continuous mana production is very nice for us. And it's got a little protection for itself. Next up is Nullhide Ferox. This is an interesting one. This is a 6/6 for 2 and double green. It's a beast. It has hexproof, but it means we can't cast non-creature spells. Now, in all honesty, we're running 43 creature spells, so that's 42 other than the Ferox, but we have some enchantments, some artifacts, some instants and sorceries. So the Nullhide Ferox does stop us from casting those. However, we can pay 2 generic mana, and it will lose all of its abilities until end of turn. Anyone can activate this, so our opponents, if they want to target it, could activate this ability and it loses hexproof. So in a way, it's not exactly the same, but it sort of has Ward 2. If they want to activate this ability, let it resolve, and then it loses hexproof and they can target it with something. That's not exactly how Ward works, but it ends up being, in a lot of people's minds, the same thing as a 2 mana surcharge. But we can also activate it in order to cast our non-creature spells. That's totally fine for a 6/6 for 4, or even a 7/7 for 4 with our commander. In addition, if a spell or ability an opponent controls causes us to discard the Ferox, we can put it on the battlefield instead of putting it in our graveyard. We sort of discard it to the battlefield. So if you've got an opponent who's playing, hand attack spells, that sucks. I don't like that in Commander personally. But if someone does, great. Let them enjoy themselves. We will enjoy getting our Ferox into play for free. Next up is Nylea Keen-Eyed. So the price of this deck really just sort of added up because there's a bunch of cards that are just worth several dollars, $5, $6, $7, $8, but they just work so well for this kind of deck. 3 and a green for a 5/6 legendary enchantment creature god with indestructible. And as long as our devotion to green is less than 5, Nylea isn't a creature. Now, devotion means you look at all the permanents you have in play, you count up the colored mana pips in their casting costs, and that is your devotion to that color. So, for example, if we had these top 8 cards here, our devotion to green would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, because that's the number of green pips among these cards. Now, Nylea is a permanent when she's not a creature. If our devotion to green is less than 5, Nylea isn't a creature, she's just a legendary enchantment. But once our devotion to green becomes 5 or more, she's also a creature, a god, and so we can attack and block with her. And she does contribute that single green in her casting cost to our devotion, because she's still a permanent we have in play. She just may not be a creature all the time. But whether or not she's got indestructible, she discounts all of our creature spells. Again, we've got more than 40 creature spells, so that counts for good discounts. And she has an activated ability. For 2 and a green, we can reveal the top card of our library, and if it's a creature card, we can put it in our hand, otherwise we may put it into our graveyard. It's sort of like exploring into a creature, if you want to think of it that way. But yeah, Nylea, I will mention this. Nylea will not come in with a counter on her if Surrak and Goreclaw are in play, if when she enters, she's not a creature. I believe that's correct. If that's not correct, let me know in the comments. Next up is good old Questing Beast. Love Questing Beast. 6 abilities that no one remembers. So for 2 and double green, we get a 4/4 legendary beast with vigilance, death touch, and haste. Questing Beast can't be blocked by creatures power 2 or less. Damage that would be dealt by creatures we control, including by Questing Beast, can't be prevented. And whenever Questing Beast deals combat damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to target planeswalker that player controls. So Questing Beast, if it does damage to an opponent, let's say it's not blocked, but they have a planeswalker, it's going to do that 4 damage, or 5, of course, if it came in with a counter from our commander, and then do that same amount of damage to one of their planeswalkers, just sort of chomp on them as a bonus, because, 3 heads. So yeah, damage being prevented, it's relevant sometimes. Being unable to be blocked by little creatures, relevant. And I mean, vigilance and death touch. Haste is not as big of a deal for this if it comes in, once our commander's already in place, since our commander will give it haste as a triggered ability. But even without that, it's still a strong, scary card, and it has such a reputation since it came out in Throne of Eldraine that it's a little bit of a removal magnet, which means people are using removal on it and not on some of our better cards. Or like our commander. Next up we have Temur Sabertooth. 2 and double green for a 4/3 cat with 1 ability. For 1 and a green, we can return another creature we control to its owner's hand, and if we do, the Sabertooth gains indestructible until end of turn. This is great. It's a way for us to protect our creatures, including our commander, so all we have to do is recast them. We can protect the Sabertooth by bouncing something else and giving this indestructible. And whatever we bounce, we are rebuying when we cast it again. So if we're casting our commander again, we're doing it without having to pay the commander tax. If we're casting something else again, we're getting any triggers we have when that thing would enter, like the Outcaster Trailblazer maybe drawing us a card, or even just our commander putting a counter on it and giving it haste until end of turn. So we could bounce something that maybe came into play before we got our commander into play, so that we can play it again and get that counter and the haste from our commander on it. So yeah, pretty sweet. Next up is the Earth King. I love this card. I think this card is great. For 3 and a green, we get a 2/2 legendary human noble ally. So not that big of a brute, but when it enters, we make a 4/4 green bear creature token. We make Bosco. So a 4/4 bear is fine for 4 mana. It's not great, but it's fine, especially when it comes with a 2/2 friend. However, that 2/2 friend says whenever 1 or more creatures we control with power 4 or greater attack, we rampant growth. So if we attack with 4 creatures with power 4 or greater, we search our library for 4 basic forests, put them on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. So this is one of our very best ramp spells in the deck. We can have this come in, it enters, we make Bosco, and then we attack with whatever else we already have in play, or whatever we have in play that, is hasty, if it's big enough, and we're going to rampant growth for each of those things that are attacking, assuming it's big enough. Now, obviously, we can't attack with Bosco, the bear, because Bosco comes in and is a token, so our commander does not give him a counter and haste. Even though the Earth King will come in and become a 3/3 with haste. We don't need to attack with the Earth King necessarily. He's going to be fine sitting back, being a value piece, letting us ramp like crazy. Love this guy. Next up is the Foretold Soldier from the Doctor Who decks. 2 and double green for a 6/6 alien zombie soldier. This card is really cool. Check this out. It must be blocked if able. So it's going to come in, probably be a 6/6 trample haste. It can't be blocked by more than one creature. So we're probably going to take something out, assuming our opponent doesn't have a creature with, indestructible or a toughness of 8 or more. And when this creature deals damage, we exile it face down and it becomes Foretold. Foretold means, let's look at this Foretell ability. Foretell is a special ability that we can activate when this card is in our hand. We can pay 2 generic mana, exile it face down, and on a later turn, we can cast it for its Foretell cost rather than its mana cost. So we pay 2 this turn, next turn, or some other turn later than the one we activated it, we can cast it for 1 and a green. Which means we can, if this is in our opening hand, let's say, turn 2, we pay 2 generic for it and exile it, and then whenever we get our commander in, we can then pay 1 and a green, have the Foretold Soldier come in from exile. Our commander will make it into a 7/7. It must be blocked. We don't have to attack with it, but we should. That's what our deck is for. So we're attacking with our hasty 7/7 Trampler. It has to be blocked, and by only one creature. So our opponents are going to have to block with one thing. Hopefully that thing dies. But either way, the Foretold Soldier is going to deal damage, so it's going to exile itself face down and become Foretold again. So essentially, this becomes a creature that every turn we pay 2 and a green to cast it, have it become a 7/7, and attack with it. And we're going to be able to do that every single turn, because it's going to keep getting the triggers from our commander, and it's going to keep triggering anything else we have, like Garrick's Uprising, or the Outcaster Trailblazer, or since it's attacking, the Earth King, to ramp us as well as drawing those cards. Even if not, we're using it sort of as repeatable removal, even though I don't have it tagged as such, because it has to be blocked. So if our opponents, again, don't have a creature with toughness of 8 or more, or, indestructible, then we're just going to be doing damage to those creatures and killing them, because it has to be blocked and can only be blocked by one creature. Anyway, such a cool card. I really am impressed by the design of this card. It's a lot of fun. And it's the kind of thing that you play at the table and people are like, what does that do? That is really sweet. So yeah, big fan of this card. Next up is Toski. Love this guy too. I love Call Time. For 3 and a green, we get a 1/1 legendary squirrel that can't be countered, is indestructible, and attacks each combat if able. So the first turn, Toski doesn't have haste unless our commander's in play, in which case Toski is a 2/2 indestructible, uncounterable squirrel that has to attack. But if we don't have to attack with Toski, at least that first turn, he's a really good blocker because he's a 1/1 indestructible. However, he's going to attack every turn. He has trample, so if our opponents decide to block with like a 1/1, he will trample over, assuming he's got that counter from our commander. But most importantly, he's Coastal Piracy on a stick. Whenever a creature we control deals combat damage to a player, we draw a card. That's Toski, it's any of our creatures. And remember, all of our creatures have trample as long as our commander's in play. So we're likely to be able to draw quite a few cards thanks to good old Toski. Next up from Aetherdrift is Agonosaur Rex. This is 3 and double green for an 8/8 dinosaur with trample. 5 mana for an 8/8 trampler. Ah, that's amazing. A 9/9 trampler with haste with our commander in play. Pretty good. We can also cycle it for 2 and a green, which means when it's in our hand, we can discard it and pay 2 and a green to draw a card. And when we cycle it, we put 2 1/1 counters on up to one target creature and or vehicle, and that creature or vehicle gains trample and indestructible until end of turn. So we can use this to draw ourselves a card. We can use this to pump up one of our creatures, or we can use this to make one of our creatures evasive or make it indestructible. because all of those things happen. So we've got 4 use cases for cycling this. And if we don't feel like doing any of that, once our commander's in play, this is a 5-mana 9/9 trampling haste creature. That's enough to make someone's day sad. All right, Defiler of Vigor is next. Great card from Dominaria United. 3 and double green for a 6/6 Phyrexian Worm with trample. And a paragraph here. This means all of your green permanent spells, treat one of their green pips as though it's a Phyrexian green pip. Because it says, if you cast a green permanent, you can pay an additional 2 life, and if you do, you reduce a single green pip of it that way. Which is to say, you've turned one of the green pips into a Phyrexian green pip. You can choose to pay 2 life rather than that green pip. So this is a little bit of an acceleration piece, because we don't need our life. Our opponents are going to lose theirs much faster. And even if we don't do that, whenever we cast a green permanent spell, we put a 1/1 counter on each creature we control. Now remember, that's a cast trigger, not an enters trigger. So that'll happen before whatever, if we cast a creature, it's going to trigger the Defiler and put a counter on every other creature, then our creature spell will resolve and enter the battlefield. But that's still pumping up all of our creatures quite a lot. Next is the Elder Gargaroth. Back from M21, this is I remember this guy a lot. So 3 and double green for a 6/6 beast with vigilance, reach, and trample. That's pretty good already. But when it attacks or blocks, we either make a 3/3 beast, gain 3 life, or draw a card. This is us drawing cards every time we attack with this. What if this is a 7/7 vigilance, reach, trample, haste? We attack with it, immediately draw a card to replace it, or we make a little beast token. Doesn't benefit from our commander's triggered ability because it's a token, but still fine. Or what the heck, maybe we gain some life. It has vigilance, so we can also block with it and trigger it each of those times. Yeah, very, very good. Next up is Garruk's Pack Leader. 4 and a green for a 4/4 beast. It says whenever another creature we control with power 3 or greater enters, we may draw a card, and we probably will. So this is even better than Garruk's Uprising because it's power 3 or greater, which means any creature we played with power 2 won't trigger this, even if our commander's in play. Something worth recognizing for these triggered abilities, because the creature is either entering with power 3 or greater, or it's not. It doesn't matter what its power ends up being. So if we have a 2/2 come into play, and we've got our commander in play and Garruk's Pack Leader, our commander will trigger and put a counter on that creature. But the fact that its power becomes 3 doesn't retroactively trigger Garruk's Pack Leader. So it has to have a power 3 or greater printed on it before our commander comes in play. Or commander puts a counter on it when it comes into play. Worth noting. But this is an awful lot of the creatures in our deck. This is going to draw us a lot of cards. Next up is God Eternal Ronus. Remember Ronus from before? This is Ronus as a zombie. Feel old now? For 3 and double green, we've got a 5/5 legendary zombie god with Death Touch that says when God Eternal Ronus enters, double the power of each other creature you control until end of turn, and those creatures gain vigilance until end of turn. This is a huge pump effect. It's like an overrun in a way, because all of our creatures already have trample thanks to our commander. And Ronus is going to come in and it says each other creature, so Ronus doesn't double its own power. But it sure does get a counter and have haste and trample thanks to our commander. Trample and Death Touch and haste and being a 6/6, that's all very powerful. In addition, when God Eternal Ronus dies or is put into exile from the battlefield, we can put it into our library third from the top, so we can draw it again. Let them kill Ronus, it's fine. We'll get it back and play it again and do some more damage. Maybe the opponent we killed with this ability, we're going to be able to kill the next opponent with that same ability in a few turns. Next up is Oher Kaslam, from Deepest Growth, from Lost Caverns of Ixalan. For 3 and double green, we have a 6/5 god, a lot of gods in this deck, a legendary god, with trample. And it says, whenever Oher Kaslam deals combat damage to a player, which remember, it's got trample, and it's probably going to be a 7/6 with our commander, reveal that many cards from the top of your library. That many meaning the amount of damage that we did to the player. You may put a creature card and or a land card from among them onto the battlefield. So directly onto the battlefield with whatever creature and land. You can do one of each or both if you find both, and then put the rest on the bottom in a random order. And when this dies, we return it to the battlefield tapped and transformed under its owner's control. It comes back tapped as Temple of Cultivation, which is a land that just taps for green. Or we can pay 2 and a green and tap it to transform it, but only as a sorcery and only if we control 10 or more permanents. It's not quite Ascend, but it's similar to it. We need the 10 or more permanents at the time we activate this. However, note, it says 2 and a green, tap and transform it. That means we tap it and then flip it over, so it's still tapped. So we can't attack with it right away. Still, pretty good. Next up is Silverback Elder, which I can't believe it's gotten up to $7.50, but it's 100% worth it. Love this card. 2 and triple green for a 5/7 Ape Shaman that says whenever you cast a creature spell, choose one of these 3. Destroy target artifact or enchantment, so a free naturalize. Look at the top 5 of your library. You can put a land from among them on the battlefield tapped and put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So just a little bit of acceleration for you. Or just gain 4 life. Just shore up your life total, destroy something annoying, or ramp if you don't want to do either of those. The Elder is so powerful and playable in so many different decks. If you've got green and you're running big creatures, you can put the Elder in it. So I don't typically like to put cards that are too expensive if they aren't just absolutely perfect for the deck and also playable in some other deck. And I know not a lot of people who are watching this video think that $7.50 is a lot, but I like to keep my budgets around $100, sometimes up to 120, lower if I can get it. I'll go higher if I need to, but yeah, I went back and forth on this card simply because of the price, but its value is unquestionable. Love this guy. Vorinclex is next. Another little expensive card, and a card that we have made a deck for. If you want to see that deck, check out the playlist linked in the video's description. So Vorinclex is a legendary Phyrexian Praetor for 3 and double green. He is a 6/6 with trample and reach. And when he enters, we search our library for up to 2 forest cards, reveal them, put them in our hand, and then shuffle. So we could find non-basic forests if we had any, but we don't. So this is going to draw us 2 forests, essentially, as soon as he comes in. And then for 8 mana, this is expensive, but we can get there. For 6 and double green, we exile Vorinclex and return it to the battlefield transformed under our control, only at a sorcery speed, and he is a saga called the Great Evolution. The way sagas work is when they first come in, and at the start of our first main phase, we put a lore counter on it, and the ability in the next chapter triggers. So when Vorinclex transforms into the Grand Evolution, it'll enter and we'll put a lore counter on it and trigger the first chapter, which is mill 10 cards, then put up to 2 creature cards from among the milled cards onto the battlefield. So we get to just get 2 creature cards from our top 10 onto the battlefield. Everything else goes in the graveyard, but that's fine. The next turn, at the start of our first main phase, we get the second chapter, which is distribute 7 +1/+1 counters among any number of target creatures we control. So only on our creatures, but we can pump up our creatures pretty big. We can even put all 7 counters on one thing if we want. And then the third chapter. Normally, the third chapter on a saga would resolve and the saga would go to the graveyard. However, the third chapter ability is, until end of turn, creatures you control pay a generic mana, and this creature fights target creature you don't control. We also exile this saga and return to the battlefield face up, which means Vorinclex comes back and enters, and we get to search our library for 2 forests, reveal them, put them in our hand, and shuffle again. So that means Vorinclex himself does not get this ability, because this will happen first, and then we will exile the saga and return to the battlefield. But what this means is all of our creatures, we can pay a single mana and have them fight a creature. We could do it again if our creature survives. We can do it as many times as we want as long as our creatures survive. But all of our creatures get to do that during that turn. A good use of our mana. And if we didn't have any lands in hand when we started this turn, no worries. Vorinclex comes in and finds us those forests. So we at least get to put 1 into play and, maybe use it to have something fight something else. So yeah, Vorinclex gives us a lot of value, even just being 6/6 for 5 with Trample and Reach. Next up is a new card from Lorwyn Eclipsed, new at the time of this recording. It's Jubilation. Love this art. 5 and a green for a 5/5 Elemental Incarnation that says when it enters, creatures we control get +2/+2 and gain trample until end of turn. It's sort of like the Angry Bacon, which we'll see in a minute. So this is a good overrun effect for us to close things out. Everything gets +2/+2, sounds good. Jubilation will get it too, because it doesn't say other creatures you control. It'll become a 7/7. And if our commander was in play, it's also going to get a counter and have haste and trample, so it'll be a total of an 8/8 with trample and haste. Pretty good. In addition, Jubilation has Encore for 7 and double green, meaning when it's in our graveyard, we can pay 7 double green and exile it from our graveyard to make a copy of it for each opponent we have. Those copies will gain haste, we have to sacrifice them at the next end step, and of course we can Encore only as a sorcery. But if we've got 3 opponents, we can have 3 Jubilations, which means all of our creatures are going to get +2/+2 3 times. So all of our creatures get +6/+6, including the Jubilations, which means these are 11/11 trampling tokens we're getting, on top of all of the other stuff we've got going on, including the counters from our commander. So I should mention, though, our commander won't be giving counters to these tokens because they are tokens. But still, 11/11s that give +6/+6 to all of our other creatures sounds pretty good. Next up, I love Kogla. Kogla is 3 and triple green for a 7/6 legendary ape that enters and fights a creature we don't control. Just comes in and kills something. And whenever Kogla attacks, which is not the same as fighting, but once we can attack with Kogla, which again might be right away with our commander that gives things haste, whenever Kogla attacks, we naturalize something. We destroy an artifact or enchantment defending player controls. Has to be from the defending player, but that's still good. We can also pay 1 and a green and return target human we control to its owner's hand, and Kogla gains indestructible until end of turn. What that means is we have some humans in this deck. We've got 6 total humans. But do you know who one of them is? Surrak and Goreclaw. So Kogla can protect our commander. If someone tries to remove it, we just activate Kogla, bounce our commander to our hand. Kogla also gains indestructible until end of turn, but we fizzle whatever removal spell they were using on our commander. And if we have the mana for it, if they use a removal spell on our commander, we activate Kogla's ability. Returning the human is part of the effect, not part of the cost. So maybe they respond to Kogla's ability with another removal spell. Well, we just activate Kogla's ability again, and we win the stack war. I said we weren't doing things on the stack, but we sure can with Kogla. Something else that's fun. Kogla enters, and it's going to fight a creature we don't control. With this ability on the stack, we can activate the other ability and give Kogla indestructible by bouncing a human of ours, which could be our commander, but it might be one of our other humans. If we do that, Kogla is going to fight something indestructibly, so we can attack something with a power of 6 or more without losing Kogla. Pretty sweet. Lots of fun things you can do with Kogla. Actually, a very good commander to run on his own. But yeah, we're here to do March of the Machine commanders. So yeah, Kogla is beloved. Next up, it's Quake Strider Ceratops. 3 and triple green for a 12/8 dinosaur. That is vanilla. This is from Foundations, and it is backbreaking. I mean, it blocks so many things. It attacks, and people can't deal with it. Imagine now that it's a 13/9 with trample and haste. How many times do we have to attack with this before it's just like our opponents are dead? Which means this is a 6 mana vanilla creature that's going to be removal bait in our deck. Why? Because that's just how good Surrak and Goreclaw are. Yeah, Quake Strider Ceratops, very, very nice. I decided to keep this in rather than Gigantosaurus, which is in the considering section. Gigantosaurus, which is a 10/10 dinosaur for quintuple green. This costs a little bit more, but has better attacky stats, and is a little easier to cast if we happen to have a couple of lands, or at least one land, that is not producing green, that produces colorless mana. So yeah, love the Ceratops, does a lot for us. Next up is Soul of the Harvest. Soul of the Harvest is 4 and double green for a 6/6 elemental with trample that says whenever another non-token creature we control enters, we may draw a card. That's us drawing a card, at least like one extra card, usually every turn. Oftentimes multiple times per turn. So just all of our non-token creatures replace themselves, plus it's a 6/6 trample or a 7/7 trample. If we have our commander out beforehand, maybe we're even attacking with this. Pretty good. Next up is Jumbo Cactuar. This is absolutely a meme card, but it works in some decks, even in EDH. So here we are. This is a 1/7 plant for 5 and double green with an ability called 10,000 Needles. Whenever it attacks, it gets plus 9,999 /+0 until end of turn. So it becomes a 10,000/7. With our commander in play, it becomes a 2/8 that becomes a 10,001/8 with haste and trample. If someone doesn't have removal for our Cactuar or our commander, this kills someone. Maybe it dies in the process. But this is a 7 mana, that player dies spell. Like, that's incredible. And we have several other ways beyond just our commander to give this thing, trample, that is. Even if we don't, even if our commander's not in play and it doesn't have haste, this is okay, we're going to have trample somehow, whether it's replaying our commander next turn or whatever. Do you have an answer for this? You've got one turn cycle. Otherwise, we replay our commander, everything has trample, we attack with this, and someone's out. So yeah, just an absolute finisher. That's a lot of fun. And look at that mustache. Come on. Next up is Titan of Industry. Also Streets of New Capenna. Love this card. Incredible art. Love it. 4 and triple green for a 7/7 elemental with reach and trample. That when it enters, we get a command. We get to choose 2. Either naturalize, destroy an artifact or enchantment. Target player gains 5 life. We make a 4/4 green Rhino Warrior creature token, or we put a shield counter on a creature we control. Shield counters do have an inherent meaning. What they are is a counter that says whenever this creature would damage would be dealt to this creature, or this creature would be destroyed, instead remove the shield counter. So if you were to say, put it on the Titan of Industry, and then the Titan blocks or is blocked by something that would do damage to it, instead of doing that damage, we remove this shield counter. Or if someone uses like murder on this, instead of destroying the creature, we remove the shield counter. It's a little bubble that protects them once. But if someone does 1 damage to it, that also pops the bubble, removes the shield counter, and that's fine. It's not meant to keep something alive forever, but we can sure put it on our commander, which can be really helpful if we're not attacking with our commander, which we might not be. We've got plenty of big things to do the attacking for us. The Titan could blow up an artifact or enchantment, or make us a Rhino Warrior, which doesn't, of course, get the benefit of our commander since it's a token, but still, it definitely triggers Garruk's Uprising and Garruk's Pack Leader and Outcaster Trailblazer. Or maybe we just need some life. In fact, maybe we can give it to another player. It says target player. Why would we do that? Because we're not worried about them gaining 5 life, but maybe it gains us enough goodwill from them that they'll leave us alone for the next couple of turns. We can spend those turns killing our other opponents, and then turn to them, and that 5 life is not going to matter that much. Next, we have the Angry Bacon themselves, the Endray's Forerunners. 5 and triple green for a 7/7 boar with Vigilance, Trample, and Haste, and when it enters, other creatures we control get +2/+2 and Vigilance and Trample until end of turn. So this has got haste on its own. It does the Jubilation thing. Everything gets +2/+2 and Vigilance, and also Trample. So yeah, that's a sweet attack. It's a nice... It's not Crater Hoof. I don't typically put Crater Hoof in my decks. It's too expensive for what I'm going for, and it's a little bit, played out. I want the things that are a little bit less good, but just as flavorful. So the Angry Bacon is my usual choice for that, and I'm glad that we can include Jubilation as well in this deck. Next up is Artisan of Kozilek. This is 9 generic mana for an Eldrazi. It's a 10/9, or with our commander, an 11/10 haste and trample. And when we cast it, before it even resolves, we can return a creature card from our graveyard to the battlefield. We just get to resurrect something. In addition, this has Annihilator 2, meaning whenever it attacks, the defending player sacrifices 2 permanents of their choice. Those might be lands, those might be tokens, it doesn't matter. We're blowing something up, and they get to choose what it is, but it's going to happen every time we attack with this. And if our commander's in play when Artisan of Kozilek comes out, you better believe we're attacking right away. They've got to deal with an 11/9 Trampler after we annihilate 2 things. Pretty sweet. Just move up a little bit. Here's the Bygone Colossus from Edge of Eternities. 9 generic mana for a 9/9 artifact creature robot giant. So this is a 10/10 for 9 with trample and haste. That's pretty big. But you know what else is good? What if we could cast this for just 3 mana? It has the warp ability for 3, which means we can cast it for 3 generic, and if we do, at the end step, we exile it, and on a later turn, we can cast it for its regular price. It's sort of like Adventure, except the Adventure itself is the creature. It just goes away at the end of turn. So it doesn't gain haste inherently, but our commander sure gives it haste. So if we pay 3 for this, it's going to come in, get a counter and haste, becoming a 10/10 haste. It's going to have trample simply because our commander's in play. So we pay 3, attack for 10 trampling damage, and assuming it survives, at the end step, it's going to go away, and we just wait until we have 9 mana, and we cast it again and do that all over again. Bygone Colossus is a great way for us to sneak something out and do it that way. Last of all, we have Ghalta, Primal Hunger. This is 10 and double green that we're never going to spend. because it's a 12/12 with trample, legendary Elder Dinosaur, that costs an amount of generic mana less equal to the total power of creatures we control. So if we even have a single 1/1 out, then this only costs 9 double green. That's a lot, don't get me wrong. But in this deck, with our huge creatures, Ghalta is likely to just cost double green, come in, get a counter and haste from our commander, and we can immediately attack with a 13/13 Trampler. That's amazing. For 2 mana on top of that, remember. And even if we cast this for a cheaper cost, or if we were to cast the Bygone Colossus for a cheaper cost, we're still triggering things like Outcaster Trailblazer, Garruk's Uprising, Garruk's Pack Leader, drawing our cards, and so forth. So yeah, exciting. So that is our Brutes section, and that's the majority of our game plan. I want to go through our supplemental cards, the things that also play into our game plan in different ways, but first, we're going to look at these support categories. We're going to start with our card advantage section, which, as usual, I've tagged as draw. It doesn't mean that all these cards actually necessarily do the draw card action, they just give us access to other cards. So for example, Bushwhack. This is a single green for a sorcery that says, choose one. Search your library for a basic land, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. Or target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. So this is Lay of the Land. It's us saying, hey Bushwhack, get out of our hand and replace yourself with a basic forest in our hand. So that's us drawing a forest, essentially. That's fine. It cycles to a forest, no big deal. Or we can have one of our creatures fight something else. We find a bush, or we whack something. Bushwhack is great. Next we have Herd Heirloom from Tarkir Dragonstorm. 1 and a green for an artifact that we can tap to add 1 mana of any color that we can only spend to cast creature spells. We have a couple of our ramp pieces that only work on creature spells, so worth recognizing when that's the case if we get something else like a Rampant Growth itself that we can't use this mana on. But we got an awful lot of creatures, so it's fine. 2 mana Rock that taps for mana for creatures, or we can tap it and until end of turn, one of our creatures with power 4 or greater, so it only ferocious things, gains trample and curiosity. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, we draw a card. So Herd Heirloom, we can activate post blockers if we want, or even, just mid-combat in another way. If we haven't used it already, one of our ferocious creatures is just going to draw a card when it does combat damage to a player. And if our opponents think our creature doesn't have trample, maybe our commander's not in play, this is also going to give it trample, and so it's going to be even easier for it to do combat damage to a player, even just one, so that we can draw a card off of it. Hunter's Talent is next. I love this one of these classes from Bloomsboro. 1 and a green for a enchantment class. The way this works is when it comes in, it has this first ability, this level 1 ability, which is when it enters, target creature we control deals damage equal to its power to target creature we don't control. That's just a bite effect for 1 and a green. It's Rabid Bite. It's great. At sorcery speed, we can pay the cost of level 2 to level it up to level 2, and it gains this text as well, which is whenever we attack, target attacking creature gets +1/+0 and gains trample until end of turn. Just a tiny little boost of power and a little bit of evasion if we don't have it from our commander. Once it is level 2, we can, at sorcery speed, pay 3 and a green to level it up to level 3, and we'll have all of these texts. It doesn't lose the ones that it had previously as we level it up. And level 3 is, at the beginning of our end step, if we control a creature with power 4 or greater, we draw a card. So it wants us to have our creatures be ferocious, have power 4 or greater. And if we attacked with a creature and we gave it +1/+0, it retains that +1/+0 until end of turn, which means if we attack with a 3-power creature and it survives, it's still going to be power 4 by the end of the turn. So we're going to draw a card off of it. So yeah, Hunter's Talent is a great repeatable way for us to draw cards. It does require 8 mana over the course of multiple turns to get there, but it gives us value for each one of those expenditures. So that's good. Next up is Kenrith's Transformation. This is another removal spell that draws us a card. For 1 and a green, we have an aura that enchants a creature, and when it enters, we draw a card, so it replaces itself. And enchanted creature loses all abilities and is a green elk creature with base power and toughness 3/3. We don't put this on our own creatures, we put this on our opponent's creatures. Particularly, it's nice to put it on someone's commander. It makes their commander into a 3/3 that they're going to want to attack us with all day, and us not block it. We'll take that 3 damage if it keeps their commander locked down, and in the process, we drew a card off of it. Pretty good. Colossal Majesty is next. It's sort of the opposite of the last level of Hunter's Talent. It's 2 and a green for an enchantment that says at the beginning of our upkeep, if we control a creature with power 4 or greater, we draw a card. So yeah, an extra card every turn. This is sort of like our Phyrexian Arena in this deck. Elemental Bond is next. 2 and a green for an enchantment. Whenever a creature we control with power 3 or greater enters, we draw a card. So this is just Garruk's Pack Leader, but without a body, but for 2 less mana. So pretty good repeatable card draw as well. Now it's Garruk's Uprising, which I've mentioned several times, but it's just sort of my touchstone for great effects in a green deck. It does 3 things. 2 and a green for an enchantment. It always gives all of our creatures trample. So a nice thing for us to have if our commander happens to be removed or hasn't gotten into play yet. It also says when it enters, if we control a creature with power 4 or greater, we draw a card. But what about creatures that enter after that? Well, while it's in play, whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters, we draw a card. Under our control, that is. It enters under our control. So yeah, if we already have at least one in play, we'll draw a card from Garruk's Uprising entering, and after it's in, every time we have one of our big creatures come in, we're going to draw a card. Again, if we have a creature with power 3 enter, and then get a counter from our commander, that will not trigger Garruk's Uprising because it didn't enter with power 4 or greater. But at least everything has trample. So lots going on with this. And again, you don't have to use the Wilds of Eldraine Enchanting Tales printing, but I try to use that as often as I can. I love Eldraine. Next up is Growing Rights of Itlimoc. 2 and a green for a legendary enchantment that when it enters, we look at the top 4 cards of our library, and we can reveal a creature card from among them, put it in our hand, and put the rest on the bottom in a random order. So we can whiff on this for sure. There's 42 creatures in our deck, so 41 that are actually in the deck, not the command zone. So a pretty good chance in the top 4 cards we're going to find a creature, even if it's not a great one. It at least draws us a creature most of the time. And at the beginning of our end step, if we control 4 or more creatures of any power, we transform Growing Rights of Itlimoc into Itlimoc Cradle of the Sun. This is a legendary land that taps for green or taps for 1 green for each creature we control. It's Gaia's Cradle. So very, very powerful card. Great ramp for us. All we have to have is 4 creatures in play for it to flip, and then it flips into a land that can tap for 4 green right away. Just excellent acceleration for us, and draws us a little card. And as a nice bonus, you get to look at these little mushroom guys. Pretty great. Next up is, we've seen Outcaster Trailblazer. Draws us a card, Garruk's Uprising style, whenever our ferocious creatures enter. Pretty good. Nylea, we can activate for 2 and a green to reveal the top card, and if it's a creature, put it in our hand. Toski is Coastal Piracy on a stick. Agonosaur Rex, we can cycle, so we can turn it into a card that replaces it. Elder Gargaroth draws us a card if we choose for it to every time it attacks and blocks. Garruk's Pack Leader is Elemental Bond on a stick. Oher Kazlam lets us look at cards on the top of our or reveal cards on the top of our library whenever it does combat damage to a player, and then either get a creature into our hand onto the battlefield or a land onto the battlefield, or both if we've got both. So that's not letting us cast more things, but it's just putting them right in play. That's pretty good. Next we have Shamanic Revelation. 3 and double green for a sorcery. It's one of our sorceries. Draw a card for each creature you control. This might be 1 card by the time we cast it. You never know how your deck's going to go. But it might be quite a few cards. It might be draw yourself a new hand. And it has Ferocious we gain 4 life for each creature we control with power 4 or greater. So life gain on top of everything, that seems pretty good. Do we need it? Maybe. But we really need those cards. And I liked this better than some other options we had for a big card draw spell, so I think it works for us pretty well. Usually we're doing like card draw engines like Elemental Bond, Garruk's Uprising, Garruk's Pack Leader, Toski, but a nice big boost of cards is pretty good. We've also seen Voraclex. Voraclex draws us 2 forests. That's card advantage. And Soul of the Harvest also draws us a card every time any of our non-token creatures enters, if we would like it for it to. So that is our card advantage section. Let's move on to Acceleration, which, as I mentioned before, I've just shorthand tagged as Ramp. So we're running good old Llanowar Elves. A single green for a 1/1 Elf Druid that taps for a green. Love this card. Just triggers all of our things that care about our creatures coming in, like Soul of the Harvest. and it's just a 1 mana card that's going to tap for mana for us, yeah, that's great. Even better is Sol Ring, though. I can't say Llanowar Elves is as good as Sol Ring. For a single mana, we get a Mana Rock, an artifact that taps for mana. This one taps for 2 colorless. So it costs 1, taps for 2, yeah, put it in your deck. Especially for a deck that's full of so many big creatures that are expensive, like ours. Even though a lot of ours require a bunch of green pips, plenty of them, almost all of them, require at least 1 colorless. Wild Growth is next, another 1 mana ramp spell. A single green for an aura that enchants a land. And whenever enchanted land is tapped for mana, its controller adds an additional green. So we turn 1, play Wild Growth on the forest we play, and now that forest taps for 2 green. The next turn we use one of those for our Llanowar Elves and the other one for the Sol Ring, and we spend that Sol Ring mana on Arcane Signet. Arcane Signet is another rock. It's 2 generic mana for an artifact that taps for 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity. Now in this deck, that's just green, which is fine. You know, this is an untapped rock for 2 mana, which is a great rate for mana rocks. That's worth it for us. Even though this only produces 1 color, we could, I guess, downgrade this to a Moss Diamond, but I don't think it's significantly cheaper, and it comes in tapped and only makes green, which is fine for us, but the coming in tapped is not so great. Anyway, we're not running Moss Diamond, but we sure could. Next up is Herd Heirloom, which we've seen. It taps for mana of any color, so in our deck, just green, but only for creature spells, and of course we can do the trample and curiosity effect for our ferocious creatures if we want. We're running Actual Factual Rampant Growth. 1 and a green for sorcery, search your library for a basic land, put that card onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. Just classic card, very inexpensive, and we could have run Farseek, or Nature's Lore even, I should say. Nature's Lore is exactly Rampant Growth, except that it finds a forest, not necessarily a basic land, and that land comes in untapped. But it's also like $3.50 compared to our 69-cent card, and we're not so desperate to get that in right away that we needed to do it. But if you want to upgrade it, or you already have a Nature's Lore, it would be a totally fine and solid inclusion in this deck. Next, we have Raucous Audience. This is 1 and a green for a 2/1 human citizen from the Avatar set that taps for a green, but if we control a creature with power 4 or greater, it adds double green instead. So this is a mana dork, makes 2 green for us most of the time, pretty good. Whisper of the Wilds is next, rather. For 1 and a green, we get an 0/2 human shaman that does exactly the same thing as the last one. We can either tap it for green or tap it for double green if we have a creature with power 4 or greater. It's not quite the same templating as the Raucous Audience, as it's 2 abilities versus 1, but in effect it's the same thing. Taps for 2 mana if we've got a ferocious creature, otherwise it taps for 1, and that's fine. We've seen Growing Rites of Itlimoc. It flips into Cradle of the Sun. That's good. It's a good ramp. Next, from Brothers War, is Gwenna, Eyes of Gaia. 2 and a green for a 2/3 legendary Elf Druid Scout that taps for 2 mana in any combination of colors. So for us, 2 green. We spend this mana only to cast creature spells or activate abilities of creature sources. So again, this is restrictive mana in the same way that Herd Heirloom's mana is restrictive, but 2 mana from a 3-mana dork is very good. And whenever we cast a creature spell with power 5 or greater, we put a 1/1 counter on Gwenna and untap it. Meaning, if we've got a creature spell with power 5 or greater in our hand, we want to use Gwenna to cast it, because it will make Gwenna a little bigger, but more importantly, untap her so we can tap her for mana again in that same turn. Cast another creature spell. Outcaster Trailblazer, of course, comes in and adds a mana of any one color, which might be without us having to pay for it at all this turn if we've plotted it. Topiary Stomper comes in and Rampant Growths for us. Wayward Swordtooth comes in, and while it's in play, we can always play an extra land on each of our turns. So any lands we draw, we can just put them right out. Colossal Ratterworm, once it's in the graveyard, we can pay 1 and a green and exile it to kind of Rampant Growth out a desert. It might happen, you never know. Hulking Raptor at the beginning of our pre-combat main phase adds 2 green to our pool. The Earth King lets us Rampant Growth every time we attack with any number of creatures power 4 or greater, and it does that Rampant Growth for each of those creatures. O'Hare Kozlem can, when it does combat damage, give us a land directly onto the battlefield. It doesn't even say tapped. if we find a land in our top cards that we're revealing from it. Plus, it can become a land itself. And Silverback Elder, if we cast a creature spell, we can choose to look at the top 5 and put a land from among those cards on the battlefield tapped. So yeah, good acceleration there as well. That is our acceleration section. We have a section on removal. That's our interaction section. Again, just tagged as removal. So Bushwhack is 1 green at sorcery speed to have one of our creatures fight a different creature we don't control. That's solid. Collective Resistance is 1 and a green with an escalate for a green, meaning we get to choose one of these costs down here, or one of these effects down here, I should say, and for each effect we want to choose beyond the first, we pay an extra green for this. So we can pay 1 and triple green and get all of them if we want. So we can either have it destroy an artifact, destroy an enchantment, or give one of our creatures hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. And it doesn't actually have to be one of our creatures. It says just target creature. So we can use this on opponent A's creature when opponent B is trying to get rid of it. And we just say to opponent A, look, I can fizzle their spell. What will you give me for that? Will you leave me alone for the next couple of turns? How much is this creature worth to you? You know? And then we can, if we want to be a jerk, we can pay like 1 and double green, give their creature hexproof and indestructible, but also destroy one of their artifacts. Or, you know, an artifact or enchantment that the opponent that was attacking them or targeting them controls. You never know what we're going to do with this. Hunter's Talent's first ability is a bite effect, so that's good removal. Kenrith's Transformation takes away all the abilities of a creature, just makes it a vanilla 3/3. Pretty good. Monstrous Emergence from Duskmourn is next. 1 and a green for a sorcery that says, as an additional cost, choose a creature you control or reveal a creature card from your hand. That is beholding a creature, choosing one you have in play or revealing one from your hand. And Monstrous Emergence deals damage equal to the power of the creature we chose or the card we revealed to target creature. So this is like a bite effect. It's not the creature itself dealing the damage, it's Monstrous Emergence doing the damage, but it lets us use it early on when we maybe don't have enough mana to cast the creature in hand yet. We can still have that creature, quote unquote, bite a creature in play. So this is at sorcery speed, so it's not quite as good as some other bite effects, but the fact that we're able to bite with a beheld creature rather than just one in play can be very strong in this deck. Ram Through is an even better bite spell. For 1 and a green, at instant speed, we can have target creature we control deal damage equal to its power to target creature we don't control. That's just Rabid Bite. But if that creature has Trample, excess damage is dealt to the creature's controller instead. And if our commander's in play, all of our creatures have Trample. So think about one of our, 10/10 creatures doing 10 damage to an opponent's 3/3, and because our creature has Trample, that means 7 damage gets dealt to the creature's controller. Pretty good for a removal spell that we can even use as a combat trick if we want to. Next up is Bridgeworks Battle. This is 2 and a green for a sorcery that gives one of our creatures +2/+2 until end of turn, and then has it fight a creature we don't control. Hopefully, our creature lives, especially with that pump up. But even if it doesn't, that's a good removal effect. However, this is a modal double-faced card. So if we want, we don't have to cast this as a spell. We can play it as a land. We can play it as Tanglespan Bridgeworks, which is a land that taps for green, and as it enters, if we pay 3 life, it'll come in untapped. Otherwise, it comes in as a tap land, which maybe we want. This gives us an extra land in our deck. If we're hurting for land early on especially, we can just bolt it in and we've got it right away, or we can wait for it. Or we can hang on to it and it's a good removal spell. Either way. Plus, it's Eldraine themed. Love it. Silverback Elder, one of its options, of course, is naturalizing something. That's good removal. Vorinclex is in this section because the Grand Evolution's 3rd chapter lets all of our creatures just, for 1 mana, fight something. That's pretty good removal. Kogla comes in and fights a creature and then attacks and naturalizes something. That's good. Titan of Industry can naturalize something as one of its abilities. And Artisan of Kozilek, again, not exactly removal, but Annihilator 2 sure feels like it. So that is our interaction section. We're running 0 Wraths in this deck, so let's get right into our supplemental categories, starting with our discounts. So these are all the cards that let us play our spells for cheaper. So we've seen 3 of these. Goreclaw makes all of our power 4 or greater creatures cost 2 less. Nylea makes all of our creatures in general cost 1 less. And Defiler of Vigor makes all of our green permanents able to cost 1 green less if we're willing to pay 2 life in the process. It's a discount. We also have Emerald Medallion. Emerald Medallion is a 2-mana artifact that just makes all of our green spells cost 1 less to cast. So we've got a lot of cards in this deck that are green, which is to say everything that's not a land, we have like 5 or 6, I think, cards, including the Emerald Medallion, that are colorless. Everything else is a green spell, which means it's discounted by the medallion. I don't call this a mana rock. It's a discount, not a ramp piece. But it sure can give us that discount 2 or 3 or even 4 times during each turn, once we get up to the point where we've got plenty of actual ramp and actual lands on our land base, and on our board at least. So Emerald Medallion, I don't typically like to run these in my decks that much, but it's very workable in this one. So that is our discount section. Let's look at all the ways we can pump our creatures up. So Hunter's Talent, level 2, whenever we attack, one of our creatures gets +1/+0 and trample. Ronus, if we activate him, can give, for 2 and a green, can give one of our creatures +2/+0 and trample until end of turn. Goreclaw, when Goreclaw attacks, gives all of our ferocious creatures, or creatures with power 4 or greater, +1/+1 and trample until end of turn. Noticing a theme? Agonosaur Rex, once we cycle it, we can put 2 1/1 counters on one of our creatures, or a vehicle, which we don't have any of, and that creature or vehicle will gain trample and indestructible until end of turn. Defiler of Vigor, whenever we cast a green permanent spell, all of our creatures get a 1/1 counter. God of Ronus, when it enters, all of our creatures, other than God of Ronus, get their power doubled and gain vigilance until end of turn. Unnatural Growth is next. This card is very inexpensive for how powerful it can be in a game. You can really run away with things. This is one of those 5-mana enchantments that does so much that it just changes the game. For 1 and quadruple green, we have an enchantment that says at the beginning of each combat, so that's combat on our opponent's turns as well, we double the power and toughness of each of our creatures until end of turn. So if Defiler of Vigor came in and got a 1/1 counter on it from our commander, we then go to combat, Unnatural Growth will trigger, and this will become a 14/14. If we cast some green permanent spells and put more counters on our things, Unnatural Growth is going to keep triggering at the start of every combat and make our stuff enormous. Hopefully, this makes us close out the game faster, so we can shuffle up and play again. Pretty good. Vorinclex, of course. The second chapter of the Grand Evolution puts 7 1/1 counters among the creatures we control. Jubilation and Endray's Forerunners both enter and give all of our creatures +2/+2 and trample, and with the Forerunners, vigilance as well, until end of turn. So those are our pump effects. We have a little bit of protection, actually a little more than I remembered. Collective Resistance, we can give one of our creatures hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Temur Sabertooth can give itself indestructible in the process of bouncing one of our creatures, so that's protecting 2 of them. Similarly with Kogla, it can get indestructible when we bounce a human, so protecting 2 creatures. Agonosaur Rex, when we cycle it, can make one of our creatures indestructible, in addition to giving it trample until end of turn and putting 2 counters on it. We haven't seen Spearbreaker Behemoth, although we probably should have. This, I guess this is in the deck, and it is a brute, but I didn't tag it as one because it's really in here as a protection spell. But we could sure use it brutally. For 5 and double green, we have a 5/5 beast with indestructible, and for a single generic mana, we can give a creature we control with power 4 or greater indestructible until end of turn. Actually, it doesn't even have to be one we control. We can use this politically as well to help out our opponents, and then, extort them for a payback. But yeah, I'm surprised I didn't make this a brute, so we'll make it one right now. And, that's brutes. Pardon me. That's also true about the Stonehoof Chieftain. Should have put that in there as well. So now we've got even more brutes, so enjoy that. Anyway, Titan of Industry can put a shield counter. Oh no, what have I done? Titan of Industry can put a shield counter on one of our creatures when it comes in, and Stonehoof Chieftain is 7 and a green, so an expensive creature, but it's an 8/8 Centaur Warrior with trample and indestructible, and whenever another creature we control attacks, it gains trample and indestructible until end of turn. So yeah, that's extremely powerful, and yet another source of temporary trample. That covers our protection spells. Let's look at our ways of getting evasion. beyond just our commander, which of course isn't listed in this category, but if it were, that would be 10 ways. So Herd Heirloom can give one of our creatures with power 4 or greater trample until end of turn, as well as Curiosity. Hunter's Talent at Chapter 2 can give +1/+0 and trample until end of turn. Garruk's Uprising, all of our creatures get trample. Ronus, if we pump one of our creatures +2/+0, it also gains trample. Goreclaw, when she attacks, gives all of our ferocious creatures +1/+1 and trample. Agonosaur Rex gives trample and indestructible and 2 counters when we cycle it. Jubilation and Endrace Forerunners give all of our creatures +2/+2 and trample, and for the Forerunners, Vigilance. And Stonehoof Chieftain, as we just saw, whenever any of our creatures attacks, this will trigger for each creature that is attacking, other than itself, and those creatures will get trample and indestructible until end of turn. Lots and lots of trample. What else do you need in a deck like this? So that's our Evasion section. We have a section of tokens, just to note that we make them. Lovestruck Beast makes its little 1/1 friend. Eldra Gargaroth can make some 3/3 beasts. Jubilation can encore itself and make multiple copies of itself based on the number of opponents we still have alive. And Titan of Industry can make us a 4/4 Rhino Warrior creature token. So not that much in the way of tokens, but our commander doesn't trigger on tokens anyway, so it's fine. The final section of our spells is this Recursion section. It's got 3 cards we've seen: the Bristlebud Farmer, that can bring cards back from the graveyard from the ones we milled when we attack with it, and sacrifice a food. Foretold Soldier can keep bringing itself back, because when it deals damage, we exile it, and it can come back again and again. And Artisan of Kozilek can just bring one of our creatures back to the battlefield when it comes in. We also run Eternal Witness. It's 1 and double green for a 2/1 Human Shaman. When it enters, we can return a card from our graveyard to our hand. So this is a single green mana more than Regrowth, and it's Regrowth that comes with a body, which will trigger several of our things, several of our effects, and we can attack with it, which will trigger some of other things. And at the very least, it'll be a 3/2 haste trample that we can attack with using our commander. That sounds pretty good to me. That covers all of our spells. As usual, we're going to go over our land base. It's going to be pretty simple this time. We're running 29 basic forests, and I chose the Tarkir Dragonstorm forests from an artist I really like, Jesper Jaisling, whose name I can't pronounce properly, but it's Tarkir, so that's where our commander's from, so we're going to use this. We've got 3 fixing lands. We're going to start with Blighted Woodland. This is a land that comes in untapped and taps for colorless, or we can pay 3 and a green, tap and sack it to search our library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. So we lose the Blighted Woodland, and we pay twice the cost of Rampant Growth to double Rampant Growth. We're just going to find 2 forests, because that's what we have in this deck in the form of basics. This is more expensive than Myriad Landscape to activate, but it comes in untapped, and we can tap it for mana. If we need it for its ramp effect, which is this, even though it's expensive, this is us getting eventually 2 lands for 1 land drop, so it's ramp. But it is expensive, so we may not end up using it, but it's there if we do need it, or if we really need to fix our green mana. We're running Mirage Mesa, which is one of our deserts. We've got a few of them. It's a desert, it comes in tapped, and as it does, we choose a color. We will choose green, and it taps for a green. So this is the land that is a tap land that makes green, but it counts as a desert, so we can use it with our Colossal Rattleworm. We're also running Temple of the False God. I know this is not everyone's favorite land, but it's solid and it's very powerful in its use case, which is great for the decks that I build. So this is an untapped land that taps for 2 colorless mana, like Soul Ring. So this is a soul land. It just can't be activated at all unless we control at least 4 other lands, so 5 or more lands including itself. So if your opening hand is like a single forest and a Temple of the False God, that's probably not worth keeping unless you've got some good ramp in it otherwise, and we have some pretty good ramp in this deck. But if you get Temple of the False God out when you've got those 4 other lands, which in this deck might be before turn 5, then it's a land that makes more mana than the land drops it took, so that's ramp. So yeah, you want to use this as much as you can, especially in a deck that has such big creatures like we have, even with the amount of ramp we're running. We also have 6 utility lands. So Bonder's Enclave is great for a deck like this with a bunch of big creatures. It's an untapped land that taps for colorless, or we can pay 3 and tap it to draw a card, but only if we have a ferocious creature, a creature with power 4 or greater. So yeah, oftentimes, if we are really like stalling out on our card draw, which we have plenty of in this deck, but if we are stalling out on it, paying 4 mana in the form of 3 mana and tapping this land to draw a card, it's not bad. You know, it's an option for us. I like to run Demolition Field in most of my decks. This is an untapped land that taps for colorless, or we can pay 2, tap, and sack it to destroy a non-basic that an opponent controls. So this is land destruction, but it's only 1 card in this deck, and at the power level of the decks that I build, most of those tables aren't really looking for land destruction. People don't like it when their lands get blown up. But it is fair to have a single answer to a problematic land. If a Voltron player is running Rogue's Passage and making their creature unblockable, you want to be able to stop them from doing that. If someone's running Maze of Ith and stopping us from attacking with our creatures, we want to be able to stop that. Having an answer to lands that either accelerate an opponent's game plan too much or prevent us from using our game plan to win, it's fine to do that. We don't have to go crazy and run like, I don't know, not like Acidic Slime is a crazy inclusion, but in our land base, totally fine to have an answer to it. So Demolition Field is it. So we pay 2, tap, and sack it to destroy a non-basic, and then that player gets to search their library for a basic and put it on the battlefield untapped. And so do we. So neither we nor they are down a land. We've just gotten rid of the thing that's problematic for us and probably some other people at the table. Totally fine. Next up is Desert of the Indomitable. This is another desert, comes in tapped, taps for green, so very much the same thing for us that Mirage Mesa is, except it also has cycling. 1 and a green, we can discard it from our hand and draw a card. So this is not just a good way for us to, if we don't need the land, just toss it and draw, but it puts a desert in our graveyard, which isn't something we care about. I was just thinking about Colossal Rattleworm the wrong way. In any case, Desert of the Indomitable, good flexibility for us, makes the color of mana we need, even if it comes in tapped, or we can cash it in with its cycling ability to just draw a card. Hashep Oasis is our last desert. This is a untapped desert that taps for colorless, or we can tap it and pay a life to add a green, which is fine. As a pain land, if we really, really need the green, it's worth spending a little bit of life on it. We have a few sources of life gain, but we don't really need it. We're going to deplete our opponent's life totals faster than they go for ours. So paying a little bit of life a couple of times to just make sure we always have exactly the green mana we need is totally worth it with the Oasis. And when we don't need it, we just tap it for colorless. We can also pay 1 and double green, tap and sack a desert, which doesn't have to be the Oasis, it can be one of our other 2 deserts, to give one of our creatures +3/+3 until end of turn. We only do this at sorcery speed, but just like sacking a desert, paying a little bit of mana for a rampant growth in our land base, totally fine. We're running Mosswort Bridge as well. Mosswort Bridge is a hideaway land. It's a land that comes in tapped and taps for green, but when it comes in, we look at the top 4 cards of our library and we exile 1 face down, sort of under the bridge. Right there, under the bridge. And then we put the rest on the bottom in our border. And then, if we have creatures with total power 10 or greater, at any time we do, we can pay a green and tap the bridge to play the exiled card without paying its mana cost. So an excellent way for us to sneak out an extra spell. Oftentimes, when you look at the top 4, we're going to see something that's quite expensive because we've got some expensive creatures in this deck. And as long as we've got enough total power among our creatures, being able to play an unexpected huge creature, like an unexpected blocker for just 2 mana essentially, 1 green and tapping this land, a nice surprise and a lot of fun to do. And it feels like we've completed a quest. We've gotten up to that amount of mana and we've been able to get something out. So yeah. Finally, we're running Rogue's Passage ourselves because we've got a lot of big creatures, and sometimes, even with our trample, our opponents are going to have enough of a defense that we're not going to be able to just kill them on our next attack if we get blocked. So Rogue's Passage comes in untapped, taps for colorless. We can pay 4 and tap it instead to make target creature unblockable this turn. So we can finish an opponent off and close things out that way. It also does not say target creature you control. So if we want to use this politically, we sure can. We can say, hey, opponent A, I know you're trying to kill opponent B, but you're worried about being blocked. I'll use my Rogue's Passage to help you kill them as long as you don't bother me for the next turn. And they might say, sure, go ahead and do it. And we say, no. You attack first, because if we use our Rogue's Passage before you attack, then your creature can't be blocked, even by us, and you might attack us with it. And they'll say, okay, that's fair. You're helping me out. We'll trust each other. I will declare this creature as an attacker, and we'll say, great. Before blocks, I'm going to activate Rogue's Passage to make your creature unblockable. And then whoever they're attacking will be like, come on, guys. And we'll say, sorry, we can't hear the words of dead people. Anyway, Rogue's Passage, very helpful for us in our deck, and it comes in untapped and makes mana, sure. And that about sums it up. Again, I'm making a deck for each of the March of the Machine legends, so let me know in the comments if there's a March of the Machine legend you haven't seen me build yet. I've made most of them. I'm finishing it out soon. And so if you have one, or a specific deck style, or if you want to see me, like I mentioned at the top of the video, make those non-face legends from the Commander product, let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, everyone. Make sure to like and subscribe. Ring the bell if you want to be notified when I post my many, many Commander decks. And remember, most of all, that Magic is fun. You should play more Magic.